What is up, guys? It's CodedRed here, and welcome back to another episode for the Advanced Spigot 1.17 series. We will be revisiting our little dead guy that we coded in the last episode. So if you do want to follow along with this code, I recommend checking out that episode before using this one. However, this episode is going to be pretty simple. We're just going to take what the guy we already coded, add in a packet reader, add in some click events, and we'll be good to go. So what the plugin is, as you can see, I did change the way he looks. Instead of laying on his back, I made his position or his pose to be swimming. So it kind of looks like he fell over. And then what the plugin does really is when you see a dead body like this, you go ahead and right click on him and you can collect the items that the dead body had on him. Once you collect the items that you want, the dead body will disappear, just so that there's not a million dead bodies around in the world. So y'all are going to learn a few different things in this episode. You're going to learn how to make the NPC clickable. You're going to learn how to remove the NPC, as well as some custom event stuff. So without further ado, let's get into the code. Like I said, we are using the code from the last episode. So if you do want to follow along with what I'm doing, I recommend going ahead and check out that episode first. But the code is pretty similar to the last episode. The only thing I did change was the code organization. I went ahead and made some packages like models and listeners. And then I'm also going to go ahead and give you guys this whole class. I changed it up a little bit, but really whenever the entity takes damage, I check if they're going to die from that damage. And if they are, I cancel the death event. I spawn our NPC. I spawn that revive potion. And then, I set the health, clear the inventory, send the spectator mode. So if y'all do want this class, go ahead and check the description below. Y'all go ahead and copy and paste it. But to begin the episode, go ahead and create a package called models. Right click on it, go to new Java class. And the first class we're going to make is our packet injector, or better yet, let's call it the packet reader. So if you don't know what a packet reader is, I have a very good example for you guys. My Minecraft examples. You guys know you love this. All right, so what the water represents is a channel. This is a network channel. So every single thing that our client does, when he jumps, when he walks, when he looks, packets are being sent. They are being sent right to the server and the server's reading them. So every single time a player does something, they are being sent. When he punches, when he right clicks, when he crouches, a packet is being sent. So the water represents all of the packets being sent. Now, what a packet reader is we're reading all the packets that are being sent. And whenever we get the packet that we want, we do something with that. And in this case, whenever we get the packet that we want, we are doing that custom event. So whenever we see that the player is right clicking on an NPC like this, right clicking on an NPC, we go ahead and do that custom event of opening up that whole inventory and everything. Now, if you've been watching along with my episodes and videos, you probably know that I already coded a packet reader before. I coded it in the 1.15 beginner series, talking about, once again, clickable NPCs. But like I said, clickable NPCs have changed a lot. Mostly the number one thing that changed was the actions. I spent many hours trying to get actions to work. That's why this video is a couple days late. I did not want to make this video without actions working, but after spending like 10 plus hours and talking to many other developers and doing many Google searches, I could not figure this out. If you guys are geniuses and you want to figure this out and you actually succeed, let me know in the comments below and I'll pin your comments so everyone else can figure it out themselves. But like I said, it's very hard to do actions. So instead I went ahead and coded a workaround so that it doesn't matter what you do to the entity, left click, right click, offhand click, it will still work. Now, before we actually get into the packet reader, I want to talk about your entity itself. So if you're following along with the episode, you should actually have all this code already. However, if you just want to learn how to make the entity clickable, there's a few things you need to do beforehand. Now, of course, you need to have your entity, your NPC. Of course, have an NPC created, have it spawned in. Like I said, we're spawning in with packets, so make sure you're sending packets and everything. But however, we need to track that entity ID. Entity ID is not anywhere else. I mean, the only place it's going to be is where you put it. So I went ahead, just for simplicity, I made a public static map. Inside here, I have an integer to an entity player. I call this the corpse entities. Set equal to a new hash map. And then of course, once we have this map at the bottom, we need to get our map and put our corpse dot get ID and then our corpse. So like I said earlier, there's no way for us to track the IDs using the Spigot API, so we have to do it ourselves. So whenever you create that NPC, make sure you have a way to relocate it. This is also how we're gonna save it. I'm gonna have a video on that later of how we're save NPCs and reload them into the server. But for right now, whenever you create an NPC, make sure you have a place where you can save the NPC's ID and as well as the NPC itself. Also, if you want to do the whole inventory thing, another thing you can go ahead and do after you obviously create the NPC and set the position, we can go ahead and say arrays.stream our player.get inventory .get contents. And then outside of this, we're say for each item stack, I'm going to do corpse.get inventory .pickup. Our corpse inventory is NMS, so we're gonna have to translate the player's inventory item stacks to NMS item stacks. And it's really simple. It's just craft item stack as NMS copy item stack. So what this for each does, it goes into the player's inventory, gets every single item that they have in their inventory, and then for each item stack, we're just gonna add it to the corpse inventory. Now, if you really want to follow along with this episode and you want to change the position right here where we set the position or the pose, of the NPC, C equals when it's sleeping, and D, one that I use, would be when it's swimming. So if you want to have the NPC looking like this is our swimming pose. So you would have to change from C to D. And then I also recommend moving the Y down 1 point. I think I did 1 point. No, I did 0.15. So I moved him down 0.15 to the Y just to make him a little closer to that grass block. Now to start off the code, we're going to need, of course, a player. And this is my little workaround I made, is an int called count. We're set to 0. Let's go ahead and create that constructor, a public packet injector, or PacketReader. And we're going to set this dot player equal to player. Go ahead and import everything. Once you have that, let's go ahead and code the main method of the inject. So I actually made this return a Boolean so that we can say if it doesn't work, we can just return false, and you can have a little, check whenever we inject the players. So we're injecting them into the channel. The whole water thing I showed you guys, we're injecting them into this channel. So when we inject them, of course, we need some NMS. So we're gonna need a craft player, NMS player equals to the cast of a craft player. And I'm just gonna say, we'll just say player. Next up, we're gonna need a channel. We can go ahead and create a local variable called channel. Set equal to NMS player dot get handle. And here's where it has changed. Instead of saying dot get network, whatever manager, we're gonna say dot B, which is the player connection. As you can see right there, it says it. Dot B, dot A, which is the network manager. And then dot K, which is the channel. IntelliJ is awesome. It lets us know what it is. I'm gonna go ahead and import channel. Next thing we're gonna say is if the channel dot pipeline dot get, and in here we're gonna create our own kind of packet injector, our own thing to catch the packets. So you can name this whatever you want, but I'm gonna name it packet injector. So if that does not equal null, then must return false. That basically means that they already have injected into the packet injector. So we don't have to do it again because they're already in there. We already have a custom packet injector in there. But if they haven't been injected yet, let's go ahead and say channel dot add no, dot pipeline dot add after. And here is where we're going to add our packet injector in. So after our decoder, we're going to add our packet injector, and our packet injector is going to be a new message to decoder. And inside here, we put the packet we want to listen to. We want to listen to the packet play in use entity. Now, if you don't know what packet you want to use, you can go ahead and just say packet question mark, and this will listen to every single packet that is being sent. That's not really recommended. You should definitely put in the packet you want to listen to. And then you get this little red underline, go ahead and hover over it in Eclipse or IntelliJ, and just go press implement methods. Press OK, and that'll go ahead and put our method in for us. All right, there's a few things to know about this method. IntelliJ does a nice job of naming it for us, but the only thing we're going to handle here is our packet and our list. The number one thing that you guys have to do is type in list.add, and we're adding our packet. Our message to decoder will not work if you do not add the packet we want to listen to the list. So make sure you add it to the list. And then after that, we're just going to read our packet. Now I did put this in a separate method to make it a little more organized. So this is going to be a private void that I'm going to call read. And I'm going to pass in our packet plain use entity, just like that. So then inside our decoder right here, we can say read and then our packet. Like I said, it's just so our code's a little more organized. Like I said, in the past versions, we're able to say, you know, if it's attack, if it's offhand, if it's an interact add, or if it's just an interact, we're able to handle different actions. Sadly, 1.17 so far, unless I, figure it out eventually, I'm only able to handle one action. However, this method will run 4 times. It runs for each action, and there is 4 different actions. So the way I handle this was that little count we had at the top. So I'm gonna count every single time it runs. I'm gonna add 1 to our count, and then if our count equals 4, then that means we're good to go. The reason why we're doing this is because we don't want to call the event 4 times in a row. We only want to make the player open up the inventory 1 time. So we're gonna go ahead and have a count there, and when the count is 4, go ahead and open up the inventory. But the first thing we're gonna do is set that count equal to 0, just so that they're able to reopen the inventory or do whatever you want with it. Set the count to 0, and then let's go ahead and grab, let's do the ID. So I'm just gonna throw us into another method. So a private object get value. We're gonna pass in our object of our instance of our object. And then I'm gonna code it this way just so you guys have this little method you can use. It's pretty useful. But we're gonna create an object called results, set that equal to null. That's gonna be our result that we're gonna be returning. Then we're gonna create a try and catch. We're going to catch an exception E, and then e.print.trace. Inside our try, we're gonna create a field. Now this field is gonna be java.lang.reflection import right there. And we're gonna just call it field, set it equal to instance.getClass.declared. Yep. I'll explain this more once we're done. So how this all works is reflection. I have an awesome tutorial on reflection for 1.16. Go ahead and check that out, because this will make a lot more sense. But we're gonna go ahead and we need the ID of our entity. So this is our entity ID. And to get the entity ID, we need a cast of our int. We're gonna say get value. We're passing in our packet, and we're getting the value of A. Now A is, here is the packet plain use class. A is the entity ID. So using reflection, I'm able to kind of like quote unquote hack my way into this class and figure out what the entity ID is using this method right here. This is a very useful method. We're only gonna use it once just to get the ID. I could, code this differently, but this is a nice method for you guys to have to look back on or to use later on. So I'm gonna go ahead and code it like this. So once we have the entity ID, we can go ahead and call our event and, open that inventory. Before we can do this, we actually need to code a custom event. This is an advanced series, so you should be familiar with custom events. I am going to leave this code in the description below. Basically, any code that I don't code as I'm going, I leave in the description below. But this is a very, very simple custom event. Basically, to go through it, when you're creating custom events, there's a few things you have to make sure you have. You have to make sure you have this static final handler list right here. You have to have this, and you have to have these two methods right here. If you don't have these two methods and you don't have this list, the event won't work. You'll get a bunch of errors in the console. But when you create a custom event, all you have to do is create a class, make it extend event, and then just do what you want. All I want this event to do is get a player and get corpse, which is just our entity, which is our NPC. I want this event, whenever we click on it, whatever, we pass in our entity we're clicking on and the player who's clicking, and then we handle that later on. So now that we have our custom event coded, we can go ahead and create a new listener. And we'll call this corpse interact. Inside corpse interact, let's make sure we have implements listener at the top, and then at event handler. Go ahead, import listener. Now using our custom event, our right click on corpse, we're able to handle whenever someone clicks on a corpse, what to do with it. Now in the corpse event is actually pretty simple. All we're going to say in here is have a few if checks. So if the get corpse dot get pose does not equal entity pose dot c. Now remember, it is C for sleeping and D for swimming. So if you did change the pose, make sure you have the correct pose. And the reason why I'm doing this is so that if you have multiple NPCs on the server, we only really want to deal with our NPCs that we coded in. And another check that I'm going to do is say if the event.getCorpse.getInventory is empty, then let's return. So now this should be our NPC. There are some more checks you can go ahead and do, but I think these two are perfectly fine. Once you have that, we do need to create an inventory called inv. And this is just the inventory so our player can open it up and do whatever they want with it. So I'm gonna create a 54 slot inventory. I'm just gonna name it dead player. And then I'm gonna create a for loop, just say item stack. And this is gonna be a little different right here. So the import for item stack here is not your normal import. It's gonna be your NMS import right here, net.minecraft.world.item. So we're gonna for loop the items in our NPCs inventory. So event.getCorpse.getInventory.getContents. So for every item in our NPC's inventory, we're gonna add that item as a real item. So craft item stack.as bucket copy item to our inventory. So earlier we converted our item stack to an NMS, and now we're converting the NMS item to a bucket item stack so that our player can see it. And then once you're done with that, we can just say event.getPlayer.openInventory inf, and the player has opened the inventory. To delete the NPC, it's pretty simple. So for every single player that is online, we're gonna go ahead and delete it for. So get online players, and we're gonna say player connection p equals craft player for our player called on dot get handle, and then dot b. Go ahead and import everything. And once we have our player's connection, we're just gonna send packet of a new packet play out entity destroy, and then all we do is send our corpse ID, and then just make sure we are removing the corpse from our map as well. And that is how you remove a entity from the server, or a packet entity from the server. Pretty simple. Okay, returning to our packet reader, we can finally finish up this plugin. I'm sorry if the video is running a little long. It is a lot of code. But the one thing I'm going to check is go into our corpse entity, grab that map that we created, and just check if the entity ID is inside there. Because if it's not, let's just return, then we don't really care about them. It's another good way to check if our NPC is correct. And then finally, all we have to do is call our event. And to do that, I'm going to say new bucket runnable. And this is going to be a run task later. Go ahead and put our instance of our main plugin or our main class in there. And then in that run method, all we have to say, let me get rid of that. All we have to say is bucket dot get plugin manager dot call event. And the event we're calling is that custom event that we coded. We right click corpse in order to pass in our player. And we're going to pass in our corpse entity dot corpse entities dot get ID. Oh, and my mistake. I actually changed this from run task later to run task. There you go. And now this is the part where I said we really need our map because there's no way to get an ID from entity. There's no way to figure out what entity ID corresponds to our NPC, because everything's with packets and all custom. So we have to keep track of it ourselves. So that's why I went ahead and I created that map that has our entity ID corresponding to our NPC. So that in our packet reader, all that we have from this packet is our entity ID, so that we're able to actually grab that NPC from it. With that being said, that we are pretty much done. The only thing we have to do is inject our player into the channel whenever they join the server. If you want to uninject a player, it's really simple. It's just removing the pipeline, the packet injector pipeline. So all we do in here is after the pipeline, you just say remove, and then you just pass in the name of the pipeline you want to remove. I'm not going to code that in. You guys can go ahead and do that if you would like. And then just to finish off the plugin inside the corpse interact, I'm just going to add it in here. So I'm lazy. Public void on join the player join event. So whenever the player joins, all we're going to do is inject them into the channel. So we're going to say PacketReader, PJ or PR equals a new PacketReader event.getPlayer, and then PR inject. All right, now with all that done, let's make sure that we are registering our events. I'm gonna go ahead and run the plugin on the server and see if we coded it correctly. All right, now on the server, I'm gonna go ahead and kill my character if I can. Oh, and there you go. And then you see that he died like that. I'm gonna go ahead and go back into survival mode. I don't know if I had anything on me. Oh, there we go. And then I clicked on the player. You see dead player, and there's my stuff. Now there is a few things to note about this plugin. It is not perfect. No, like I say with all my plugins, they are not perfect. This is a tutorial. If you guys really want to perfect this plugin, you will have to spend more than 25 or 30 minutes working on it. Now there's a few things that you guys can go ahead and improve. I probably have a list on the screen right now showing you guys what you can improve, such as whenever the server reloads, make sure we are uninjecting players and re-injecting them into the new channel, because whenever the server reloads, the whole channel gets messed up and they won't be able to click on it again. Another thing I need to tell you guys about is hitboxes. Yes, the hitboxes are kind of messed up from when your player is in sleeping pose. If you do create an NPC that's standing like this, the hitboxes are perfectly fine, so they'll be able to right click on it in any position they want. However, in the sleeping pose, the only place that they can click on to open up the inventory is their feet. This is something that I try to work on for a few hours to see if I can change it, but sadly I wasn't able to change the hitbox in Spigot. That's why I did change the pose to swimming, because they have a bigger hitbox. It's about their whole chest instead of just their feet. Hope you guys did enjoy this episode and did learn something new. Clickable NPCs is very hard to do in Spigot. However, this is one of probably, I think there's like 3 different ways of going about it. The other ways will be using an ArmorStand, which is kind of annoying, so they keep track of ArmorStands, and the hitbox again gets kind of messed up. And the third way of going about it is using ProtocolLib. I probably will have a tutorial over ProtocolLib about clickable NPCs soon. However, the next episode is going to be about saving it unless I have a better idea come to mind. Other than that, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.